Welcome, and thank you for joining this month's Women of Innovation Spotlight webinar, STEM Talent, Making a Difference on the Job and in the Community. I'm Elizabeth Durgan, Committee Co-Chair for the Women of Innovation Program. It's now in its 17th year. The annual Women of Innovation Program recognizes women and girl innovators, role models, and leaders in science and technology, including high school and collegiate level of STEM talent pursuing tech professions. Our 2021 Women of Innovation nomination period is open for submissions until June 18th. Which is 1 month away. So please consider those you know in Connecticut who deserve recognition for innovation and leadership in one or more categories, and pass the word to friends and colleagues that the nomination form is accessible at www.womenofinnovation.org. You'll see this link again on the slides at the end of the program. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Medtronic, News 8, WTNH, Pfizer, and Sonalist. And if your organization is interested in supporting Women of Innovation Program this year with sponsorship, contact us at events@ct.org. There will be a Q&A session immediately following the presentation. We encourage you to submit your questions at any time via the Q&A button on your webinar toolbar. Today's presentation is being recorded, and we will provide you with a link to that as well as a slide deck shortly after the webinar's conclusion. And now I'm pleased to introduce the moderator for today's webinar, Stacy Rupkin, partner at Axon, Beltrop, and Hartwriter LLP, and 2019 Women of Innovation Finalist in the Medium Business category. Stacy.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm honored to be given this opportunity to introduce Maranda Wong to the broader Women of Innovation community. Now, before I turn the floor over to Ms. Wong, let me tell you a little bit more about her. She is a materials and project engineer for Pratt & Whitney's commercial and adaptive engineering programs. In addition, Ms. Wong is an advisor on Pratt & Whitney's Asian-American Leadership Forum and is part of the Raytheon Technologies Engineering Ambassador Program. In addition to her formal work life at Pratt & Whitney, Ms. Wong mentors college students in the Girls Who Code program and is a board member for the Society of Women Engineers, the Hartford chapter. Ms. Wong was a 2020 Women of Innovation finalist in the Community Innovation and Leadership category. This category recognizes women who are employed in technology, science, or engineering who have devoted their own time and resources or marshaled those of their company or organization to support community organizations or nonprofits. For example, women who have created or encouraged a culture of giving at their company or who have volunteered their time outside the workplace. Ms. Wong truly embodies the dedication to community and innovation that this category recognizes. And now she would like to tell you more about making a difference on the job and in the professional development community. Ms. Wong, you have the floor.
Thanks, Stacy, for the introduction. I'm going to start today with just a little background about myself, what I do at Pratt & Whitney, and some of the work that I do within the community. So my story really starts in Boston. I grew up right outside of Boston, in Brookline, Massachusetts. I'm the third of 3 daughters, all first generation. And what's interesting is we actually all decided to go into different STEM majors, but we all do very different things currently. So when I was in high school, it really captured my interest in engineering. I didn't actually consider it as a profession until I had an engineering course in high school. That was an introductory course, which really grabbed my interest, especially in materials. So I didn't travel too far, but I actually ended up going to Albany, right up north of Albany, to RPI, where I graduated with my Bachelor's of Science and Master's of Engineering in Materials and Science Engineering. While I was at RPI, I spent 4 years on the varsity D3 swimming and diving team. I was on the board for our Material Advantage Club. I was also in the second cohort of the Engineering Ambassadors Program, which was sponsored at that time by UTC, now Raytheon Technologies. And I also interned at Sikorsky Aircraft for 2 summers when I was there. And this really gave me the basis to really find my passion with engineering and really prioritize what I wanted to do. And I was able to figure out how to juggle multiple activities within my time at RPI. So upon graduation, I again didn't really travel too far. I went to Connecticut, where I was in the rotational program within Pratt and Whitney. And I was able to rotate through multiple disciplines within our department and get to experience different parts of our department with different materials such as coatings, composites, and polymers. And it led me to my current role as the Commercial and Military Engines Materials CIPT Deputy. And within Pratt & Whitney, I've also gotten my Master's in Engineering in Manufacturing Engineering through our Employee Scholar Program, which also helped lead me to my current role, leading down the project route. And I really found my passion of volunteering and community within Pratt & Whitney with the Asian-American Leadership Forum. And I've devoted a lot of time to helping with this organization, and I'll go into that a little bit further on the future slides. I also recently joined the board for the Society of Women Engineers Hartford chapter, and I also have participated in the Invention Convention worldwide as well as at the Connecticut level, which I'll also discuss. So currently I'm a materials engineer. This is really where my background comes in. I'm still a materials engineer. I do project work, so I am also a project engineer. I work with many different disciplines within my department, helping them with their project skill sets. I've been able to work with development, so working on some of those longer term items, early on working on durability, helping develop coatings, and I've also been able to do production support. So when things need help with production, how can we optimize, how can we improve these processes with our own OEM production? We help support tasks there. And I'm also working on commercial and military engines. So when you're working on materials, we don't really get split up between commercial versus military. We're working all the engine programs within Pratt & Whitney. What's also important to the role is business and communication. So I've been able to work with the program office, with the chief engineers, really understanding what helps drive our business from the materials standpoint. And communication is a huge part of that, making sure that we're aligned with our program office, our chief engineers, making sure we're aligned with the CIPTs who are in charge of the different parts of the engine, and making sure that we're working in harmony with each other. And then what's also important is trust. So we're working with the project leads and we're kind of that relay between the technical and the business part of Pratt & Whitney and materials. So the program office is entrusting us with a budget, and we're making sure that we are delivering to that budget and making sure we're staying on schedule and understanding our risks. And the last part I would really consider part of my role is coaching. So working with all different technical leads within my department across multiple disciplines and really helping develop their project skills. And they're trusting us to help coach them and provide them with the tools and skill set that they need to be successful. When I start talking about the leadership within Pratt & Whitney and outside in the community, it was actually a little difficult to split the two up. I think the two are very intertwined with how I've been able to approach it. So when I started at Pratt & Whitney in 2014, I was able to be a part of an employee networking group that we were starting up called Project STEM. And this is me at our first field day in 2014. So within the first few months, we were able to, as a group of engineers, we were able to get an executive champion on board to help sponsor an outreach group to help the community. Because Pratt & Whitney is such a big part of Connecticut, we wanted to make sure we were doing that outreach portion. So we leveraged what we had learned from Engineering Ambassador Program within RPI and helped incorporate pieces of that to give back to our community in the professional arena. So we kicked off our first field day in 2014, where we had over 100 students, and we were able to get some space at UConn for an morning to afternoon and have the kids go through 6 to 12 different STEM activities that were hands-on to really get them engaged. And that really kicked off me wanting to be a part of groups at Pratt & Whitney where I could help make a difference and volunteer. So the following year, I actually joined the Asian-American Leadership Forum board, where I had a lot of learning and I owe a lot of my experience to, especially in terms of leadership. The Asian-American Leadership Forum is one of 9 ERGs, which are employee resource groups at Pratt & Whitney. And I've been a board member, I was the vice president at one time, and now I act as a current advisor. And I owe a lot of my leadership to the mentors that I've had in this organization and the people who joined after me to help make it a continued success within Pratt & Whitney. And I think the employee resource groups, one of the phrases that I've heard and I use a lot in reference is low risk and high reward. And what that means is that it's a low risk because it's not involved in some of the technical work that we do within Pratt & Whitney. It's about the employees and how we can make it a better workplace and how we can make people feel comfortable in our environment. So it's related more to communication and relationships. And this is why I consider a low risk. And the high reward is that it gives you a lot of opportunities. So I've been able to network across Pratt & Whitney organization because engineering is just a subset of Pratt & Whitney, and materials engineering is a subset of that. So it's a way to just meet other people, learn about what they do, learn who they are, where they come from. And it also gives you an opportunity to do some public speaking, work in an organization, lead some groups without having high consequences with it. So it's really about the work and effort that you put into the organization, and it really shows what comes out of it. And then I was honored for ERG leadership by the Society of Asian Scientists and Engineers through the work that I did and have been doing with ALF. More within the community, I recently joined the Society of Women Engineers board for the Hartford chapter. Here you can see us before COVID times at one of the schools where we were working with the kids to create these marshmallow catapults with rubber bands, popsicle sticks, and marshmallows to get kids a little bit more engaged with the hands-on activity. So doing the outreach portion is a major part of that, and Carolyn does a great job setting up those events. So that really connects us to the community, working with some of the schools in the area. And then virtually, one of the things that we worked on this year that I helped out with was the Certificate of Merit recipients. Because we're in a virtual world right now, we really wanted to make sure that these high school students, I believe there were 97 of them this year, we wanted to make sure that they could share this experience in lieu of an in-person event and be able to have a digital badge. So we created these digital badges for the students to have, and they can add them to their LinkedIn page and really show their recognition and honor there. One of the other activities that I have been doing this year is doing Girls Who Code mentoring. And here I was able to really set up one of my first formal mentoring mentee relationships. And I was paired up with a student at RPI, so my alma mater, and I was able to meet with her, or I meet with her monthly through video, and we have guided sessions that help walk us through some of the challenges that she might have as a college student and how we can work through them. And I'm very happy and proud to say that she did get an internship at Amazon for the summer, which she was really excited for and working really hard to get that internship for the summer to help get that work experience. And then the last one that I wanted to highlight was the Invention Convention. So worldwide and within Connecticut. Through Raytheon, I had the opportunity a few years ago to actually go to the nationals at the Henry Ford Museum in Detroit and be on the panel for the students' orientation. So hundreds of students there competing and showing and sharing their inventions so that teachers, parents, and professionals went and judged them, and handfuls of students per grade were selected as winners. And it was a really great experience just to see it and see all the students and see how passionate they are about engineering. And through that led me to want to judge. And since then, I've been judging every year for the Connecticut Invention Convention as well, and really seeing what the students do and being able to provide some mentorship, asking them questions from a professional's perspective to make them think about their invention and how they can make more improvements on what they've done so far. So with that, thank you for listening to my talk, and I will take any questions.
Thank you, Miranda, for a great overview of everything that you are doing. It was an interesting journey that you made from Boston to Connecticut with a lot of interesting side trips along the way. Sounds like a very fulfilling trip, and you sound like you are very happy with your career and with your ability to reach out to the community and your volunteer work. It's really wonderful. I'm just taking a look here. Anybody who is listening and would like to submit a question, please feel free to do so. I have the ability to take a look at those questions and ask them of Miranda. But until we get to that point, let me start off with some questions that I have for you. So I've been with the Women of Innovation group for over 10 years, and I'm always amazed at how involved women are both within their respective companies and volunteering time outside and in the community at large. And you are truly no exception. In fact, I recall reading your nomination last year and just being, again, floored by how much you do in your career and out in the community. So you truly have a very full schedule. How do you find the time to do all of this work?
Thanks, Stacy. It's definitely a challenge, and there's definitely ebbs and flows to it. I find that, my parents have always said to me, as long as you're happy, that's all they care about. So if I truly care about something, I will make the time for it. It will become a priority. So I do my best, although I know I'm not the best at it, to say no when I need to, but I do my best to make sure that I'm dedicating the amount of time I need to, and that whatever I'm doing deserves, so that I can do the best job that I can do. So I do sometimes take breaks. So May is a pretty busy month for me, especially with Asian Heritage Month. So June will probably be a little bit of a slower time for me. So I do find time to take a rest and recharge, which I find helps. But if I truly want to do and I care about the mission, then I do make the time for it.
So as I listen to your journey, I think about my own journey, and I was a scientist for over 20 years before I became a lawyer, and that means I was a scientist from the mid-'80s to 2005. I became a lawyer in 2005. That's when I passed the bar and joined a law firm. I've had the opportunity to join women's groups over my years as a scientist, and even more so once I became a lawyer. Both of my career choices are male-dominated. As a scientist, it was more so because, again, 80s, 90s, very much male-dominated. As a lawyer, I would say it's a little less, but still, I often find that I'm the only woman in the room. Sometimes that made me a little uncomfortable. Now, over the past few years, I have heard, I have joined more women's groups. I have attended more conferences, women in life sciences law. And over the past few years, I've heard more about something called imposter syndrome. And when I look back, I think I may have experienced symptoms of imposter syndrome. I just didn't have a phrase for it. And I was wondering if you have ever had imposter syndrome. And before you answer, maybe you could provide all of us with a little more information on what imposter syndrome is.
Yes. So I would say, Stacey, I'm definitely in the same boat as you. I have also recently learned about imposter syndrome. And what it really means is you feel like an imposter, right? You feel like you don't belong. You feel like you don't fit. You feel like sometimes you may feel stupid because you didn't know something, or because you felt you could have been better prepared for a question that you may certainly well have not known the answer for. So I would say in my college career, I experienced imposter syndrome a lot. Even though my major was half female and half male, I still never really felt like, am I a materials engineer? I mean, do I really deserve to be here? So I went through a lot of that. And until I got to Pratt & Whitney and started joining these other groups, I realized what a great support system they are. And one of the things that I've gotten, and my manager has really shown me, is showing appreciation for other people's work is the best way to fight imposter syndrome. You're never going to know every answer in the room. And although it's, the perfectionist in me always wants to know and say, yes, I do know the answer, I have to remember, not everyone knows everything. That's why we have technical experts. We rely on them to help us solve problems, and not everyone is going to know everything about everything else. And really celebrating successes. It's really important to learn from all of our failures so we know what to not do in the future. But having something like, presenting in front of executives for the first time, or having a first successful event that you've run, even if it's a very small one, taking those wins helps motivate people and really gives them encouragement. So for all the teams and boards I'm on, I always remind them, hey, just take a moment and celebrate that you did it, because this is a really big thing. And I think when more people and when women support each other, when men support women, I mean, that's what we really need, is for people to feel supported, to feel appreciated, because that goes a much longer way than just like a one-off thank you. So I try to make sure that I thank people and tell them that they did a good job when I really think they did.
I couldn't agree more. And as you were giving that answer, I think about what happened to me in the past, the people who would step forward to remind me that I had value, because I couldn't see it sometimes in myself. And I appreciate that other people who feel like they're the only person in the room might also, even though they're lawyers or they're scientists, they've had successes, I sometimes detect that maybe they are also kind of suffering from imposter syndrome. And so I agree. Someone reaching out and just saying, that was a good job. And going a little further, this is what I like to do personally, is that was a good job. And here is why, because it allowed me to do X, and that's going to become important as this project that we're working on together moves forward. I find it very important to do that. And I will agree, I've had other women, of course, point this out to me, but I've also had male mentors who have reminded me that I do have value in what I'm doing, and explained to me how that value comes into play for any project they're working on together. And this has happened to me both as a scientist and as a lawyer. And this kind of opens up another subject that has been important to me over the past, I'd say 5 years, really, really important, which is mentoring. When I was in science in the 80s, I was at a university and there were few women. Most of us were research techs. There were a couple of women in faculty positions, but really you could count on one hand. In the entire science department, that included all disciplines, cell biology, neurology, biochemistry, chemistry, you have it. You could count on one hand how many women were on the faculty, and I don't know that more than 2 were actually tenured professors. They started a mentoring program then, and it, I will say, got off to a bit of a rocky start. But since that time, mentoring has become both formalized and to me, a little informal. And I know that you also have played a role in being a mentor. And I've been on a number of committee meetings recently where we always ask each other, how do you, nuts and bolts, how do you handle mentoring? And so I'm going to ask you a question is, do you seek out mentees or do mentees seek out you?
I would say it's kind of a combination of both. I have a lot of, I would say, informal mentee relationships. So the Girls Who Code, I would say that's my first really formal one where I was seeking out to see how I could help a college student, because I know when I was in that situation, I had the exact same struggle. How do I get an internship? How do I apply to things? What to expect in an interview? I do have 2 older sisters, but they are in very different fields from engineering. So I was kind of at a loss of what to do. And I just remember looking back at that and wishing that I had that opportunity. And I would say for the informal ones, I think just being a president or vice president of a board, that almost makes you a mandatory mentor. But it's really up to the board members to seek out that extra help or the extra guidance, which I find a lot of them do. So through the years, I've had people on the board, and then they decide to move off the board so that they can work on other things. And, I still talk to them and we still help each other out. So those relationships, in my mind, those will never end. That's just going to be a continual relationship, providing guidance for them. And then in return, I also learn things from them.
A number of questions have come in, so let me read some of these off to you. Here's a question that just came in. Who do you look up to for inspiration or mentorship?
A lot of people, an infinite number of people, I would say. So I look up to my mom, just for a lot of reasons, for being able to work full-time job, raise 3 very busy and hectic daughters who are always doing different things, being able to get dinner on the table every night while doing all of that and bringing us to practices, etc., for all the different sports we played. And in the company, I look for those female role models, those executives, the managers who have really paved the way and done a lot for women at the company. And then I also, I look to different people, even I would say Ali Wong or Aquafina, who are 2 female comedians. So it's very, very different for the professional setting, but I do look for them for inspiration because their confidence as Asian-American women to become comedians is very different. So I find I get inspiration from them and a little bit more confidence from seeing them in their roles and their professions as well. And
here's another question is, how do you encourage young women to consider STEM as a viable career?
So I like to do this with outreach, and I think as I've mentioned before too, I try to let them know and remind them I never had these experiences when I was younger, which is why I find passion and joy in trying to volunteer and help out with these organizations that are doing the outreach, because, you know, I'm lucky that I had that engineering course in high school. I would have gone on a completely different route because I ended up applying to half liberal arts schools and half engineering schools last minute because I thought I was going to be a teacher. Growing up, that was the route that I was going down. And my mom, you know, recommended, she's like, hey, there's an engineering course and, you know, your cousin's an engineer. Why don't you think about it? Why don't you consider it? And, you know, having some of those opportunities like that, like having Invention Convention, I didn't have that growing up. So I try to emphasize and remind it whenever I'm doing outreach, say, hey, like, this is really cool. You know, not all these opportunities were present. So if you're interested in it, it's definitely worth pursuing because we need more women in the field.
I'm so pleased to hear that, because when I was thinking of STEM, when I was in junior high and high school, I was actively, this was in the 70s, I was actively discouraged. And that is one area that we have made great strides in, and I'm so pleased to hear that. I think Elizabeth Durgan would like to come online and speak. Maybe not. I'm just looking at my Q&A box and it says Elizabeth Durgan would like to answer this question live. If Elizabeth is having some technical difficulties, I will go on to the next question. What's the most important risk you took and why?
I think, well, there's a couple that I can think of, but I would say going into my current role was probably one of the bigger risks that I took within my career. So, you know, my background is more technical, materials engineering. I had never really done project engineering. I did some aspects of it when I was in my rotational role, but I had never actually had a true project experience role where I was the owner of a budget. I had deliverables that were very important to the customer that I was setting, that I had the expectation that I owned up for. So I would say that's one of the most important risks, but I would say that was also, you know, a risk for my manager to take me on. So she saw something in me that thought that I could do the job. So I'm grateful for taking that risk and looking for something outside of my comfort zone, because I've really enjoyed what I've been doing.
I find that successful women do take risks, but I would like to ask, I know I took risks myself, but I'd like to ask you, how risky did it feel when you were getting ready to take that jump? What was going through your head, if you could share some of that with us?
So I would say maybe like 50% risk. I talked to the manager first before really fully applying for the role, just to get an idea of what I would be doing. I think that's the hard thing about job descriptions, is that you don't really always get the day-to-day. What is your role really going to be? Is it going to be like that every day? Is it going to change? And I took that as a step to help reduce my risk, I would say. And then I also talked to previous people who had been in the group and some people who were in the group to really talk about it. So I tried to reduce as much risk as I could to help me feel comfortable in that role by crossing off my checklist of, okay, who should I talk to? And doing so helped me feel a lot better. So I knew it was risky, and I knew it would be a very big career change. But at the time where I was, I felt like it was a good move because for me, I felt like I wasn't going to move anywhere, and I wanted a new challenge. So I wanted something new, and I wanted to keep learning and progress my skills.
I think that that's a great answer, and I couldn't agree more. And I think that women need to understand that you can manage risk, and it sort of makes it feel, I'm just going to say, less scary and more in control. And I agree with everything that you were saying, that you'll find ways to manage that risk, reach out to other people, ask lots of questions. And for me also, I would ask, and this is support from my dad. He would say, what happens if you don't take the risk? Is that so bad? And that would help center me a little bit and would give me, I'll just say, courage to plow ahead. And so kind of along those same lines, here's another question. I think it kind of dovetails into this nicely. What questions are you asking yourself lately?
Oh, I actually do a lot of reflection, especially within the past year. It's been a lot. So I try to, ask questions that my parents kind of instilled in me, am I happy is the first one. And I think that really is the ultimate goal, right? I think you want to be happy. If you're happy with your work, you'll be happier in your personal life. And you're overall just a happier person. And then people around you will be happy. So I try to make sure that I have that good balance, because once you start to get unhappy in one arena, it starts affecting your life in other places. And I know I personally don't want to go back to that. So I try to ask myself that a lot. Am I happy? The second is do I feel like I have too much on my plate? I think as a woman, I think a lot of women juggle a lot of things, right? And it's hard to say no sometimes, because people want you to do things at home. People want you to do things at work. You want to make sure that, you are handling things well. And sometimes it does get to be too much. So I always ask and try to rebalance myself and say, hey, am I taking on too much right now? Or could I take on more? What is that balance before I get to the unhappy scale?
Sure. And someone else is asking, and I think that this kind of follows what you just said, is what do you do to keep your family priority number one? And let me just admit that there are plenty of times when I fail at keeping family priority number one. Fortunately, my family is very understanding, and they realize that sometimes that's going to be the case. But what do you do?
Yeah, so I do a lot of scheduling in my calendar. I take advantage of the private piece, and so I will book off time for myself, or if I know that I have an event that I need to go to or something that needs to take place, it gets blocked off in my calendar. So like even gym time, even personal time for me to be healthy so that I work out, I will make sure that I block off that time. Even if it's 5 o'clock in the morning and no one's working at that point, I make sure to have that time blocked off in my calendar to say, that's my time. It's reserved for this. I will say though, I do not have kids yet, so I don't know what that experience is like. I do have a dog, so now that we are at home, I make sure that I block off a lunch break in my calendar, as just for mental health, but also to walk her during lunch, to make sure we both get that exercise.
Mm-hmm. And I think that exercise is important, especially this past 14 months. And I agree, I've found myself sitting more and had to make the effort to block off some time and go outside and just take a walk and sort of recenter a little bit. So you've been very generous with your time, Maranda. Is there any question that you wish I had asked or one of the audience members had asked?
Oh, I don't think so. I think the one that I like to emphasize the most, especially since I recently observed it, was the imposter syndrome, because I feel like when I talk to my friends and I talk to, whether it's friends at work or friends from college, it's something that we all experience. And I think talking about it more makes it less of a big thing.
Yeah, I agree. And it was the idea that if I feel like an imposter, if I don't say anything, maybe I can get away with being an imposter. But I agree with you. If we would just talk about it, we would realize that we all share that in common, and we can find ways to reassure each other that we are not imposters and that we do deserve a seat at the table. Again, thank you, Miranda, for sharing your time with us today. It was a wonderful presentation, and I'm going to turn this over now to Elizabeth Durgan so that she can wrap up today's meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miranda and Stacy, for a great discussion. We hope you'll all mark your calendars for the June 20th webinar in this series, which will feature Jenny Gaffney, Senior Project Manager at the Disney Company and 2020 Women of Innovation Finalist in the large business category. Registration for that will open soon, so watch your email for the announcement. And on behalf of the Connecticut Technology Council and the Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology, thank you again for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again in June.